This is In Between Them, a podcast where we uncover what it really felt like to be a child of divorce. I am Shannon Darrow, and each episode brings honest stories from brave adults who lived through this as children. This is In Between Them. Let's get going. Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi.
Before we get started, I just wanted to have you kind of give me a little bit present day, where you're at, where you grew up, where you live now, married, kids, anything that you find interesting about where you're at today.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised and still live in the same city. I am married. I have 3 kids. My older daughter, I had actually when I was young, I was 16. And then her and her father, we never married, but we have a really good, close relationship. And then I got married, and we have 2 boys. My daughter is actually married and has 2 children of her own. So I am a Mimi as well.
Wow. How wonderful to have little grandchildren.
It's so fun. It's the best. People always
Um,
say, like, it's so good. Like, it's so much better than having children. And it's funny because it's pretty special.
well, I think like when you have kids that aren't babies anymore and you see a baby and you just want to hold it,
Yeah.
that's like what you get with your grandkids. You just get to hold babies and have all these little things again, but then they're not your responsibility
Yeah.
like it is parenting. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
imagine it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I know that you know a lot about what I've been doing with this podcast and really just trying to bring light to the stories of children through divorce and what they've experienced, because I feel that that is not really an angle that is as explored as it could be. I think that kids experience divorce in ways that um, parents, particularly, but lots of people are not really aware of. I think they are impacted in ways um, that it's just not obvious, for lots of different reasons, them being children, but also the reality of the way they process information or lack of information and different things like that. And so if you wouldn't mind kind of going back in time and just, starting by sharing how old were you when your parents got divorced, and how did that come about to you? Did your parents, did they tell you, or was it an abrupt kind of change in your life? Like, what was that for you in terms of that kind of adjustment?
Okay. I was young, so I don't recall a lot of that information. I was 9, so I was in 4th grade. I do remember my dad coming to me, and like he took me to like a park or something, and he told me that he was going to be like leaving for a while or something, like he wasn't going to be home for a while. Um Other than that, I don't remember having a conversation with my mom about it. I'm sure she talked to me about it because she herself is a therapist. um but I don't recall that. I don't ever recall like anything happening in their marriage that was alarming or anything like that. Like, there was no turmoil type stuff like for me. Um, Later on, come to find out, I found out a lot of information later. But that 9-year-old me, I didn't realize what was happening or what was going on. I do remember also when that was going on, going to school. And like when it was like officially like, okay, my parents are getting divorced. I remember being like having to think about going to school and having to say like, my parents are getting divorced. And
Yeah.
at that time, I mean, gosh, I don't know what year that was. uh, 80
Yeah, probably
maybe.
86-ish, maybe?
Um, at that time, I didn't know a lot of people's parents that
Yeah,
were
yeah,
divorced. So it was kind of like almost like embarrassing or like I didn't want to share that information, you know.
yeah.
But other than that, at that age, at that particular age when I found out, I don't really recall a lot.
So, do you recall then your dad says he's leaving for whatever reason, then do you guys stay in the house that you're in? Do you and where does your dad end up in terms of proximity to you?
So yes, my mom and and it was only my mom and I. I do have two half brothers, but they were older and didn't live with us. Um, Half brothers on my dad's side. And so it was my mom and I in the house, and we stayed in the house. And my dad moved about a half an hour away. Um, I don't remember at what point I started going there. But I did the regular eventually, like every other weekend with my dad. So yeah.
Do you remember that when you did start going there, was that another kind of level of awareness? Because having him tell you he's going away may not be you processing exactly what's happening, but now he has a house and you're going to that house. Was that just kind of a natural evolution to a different way of living, or was that more, um, difficult now that there was, like, a fixed kind of permanent place where he was at?
Um, again, being so young, um, the only thing that I don't remember it being like awkward going there or anything like that, but I would get like, I don't want to be here. Like, I want to just go home and hang out with my friends and play in my neighborhood and like be at home, you
Yeah,
know? But I never had like I always went. I never had, like, a put up a fight or anything like that. I mean, my dad and I did have a good relationship. But yeah. And then my dad had an affair. I had found out later, and, the woman that he had the affair with, he actually started living with. Um, so she was in the picture as well pretty quickly. And I do remember him saying like, I want to have somebody meet you and this and that. And they started living together. So and again, I was so young and didn't really know or process or understand that, because obviously they were hiding details. And it was just
yeah,
like, "Okay, here's another lady," like, I don't it wasn't really that big of a deal to me at that time.
yeah. What was that kind of like, "Whatever, then I'll just hang out with my dad and this lady," or was it
Mhm.
difficult?
Yeah.
It was
No,
that it was
I feel like it was just like, "Yeah, she's nice," you know?
yeah. So back to when you said you wanted to be back at your house. That's an interesting thing because, as I've been talking to a lot of people, one of the threads that kind of, is weaving through them all is that kids don't always struggle necessarily with the parents, but kids really like one home base. And
Mm.
so a lot of times I think that, that isn't necessarily possible. Maybe in some instances it is or in different dynamics, but if you didn't vocalize that, did you get to a point where you were like, I I really don't wanna do this, or did you do that parenting plan or whatever was in place for a long period of time? Because I would imagine if you felt that young, that probably only got more difficult as you got older.
Um, so I think actually it got easier as I got older. I think because I had, I don't know, I grew up in a really awesome neighborhood, had tons of friends. We played all the time. It was the 80s. We played outside all the time. That I think I really missed that. And like being at my dad's, I didn't know anyone. He lived in a place that wasn't like a typical neighborhood. There weren't a lot of kids out in the street and stuff. But there was a lot to do. So he moved down to the beach. So there was a lot for us to do. And he was kind of that Disneyland dad. Um, so it became like, what are we going to do when I'm there?
Okay.
So we always had stuff that we were doing that was fun. It became like, okay, we're going to the movies. We're going here. He got a boat. We went to Catalina. We'd go here. We'd go there. You know what I mean? So it did become fun. And the older I got, then I actually had friends come stay with me at his house. So that was also better for me too.
That would be so much better for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge piece that normalizes it for kids.
Mhm.
I think when kids go like you're describing in the beginning where you almost feel like isolated away,
Yes. Yes.
then later you kind of get to incorporate both worlds together.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's a really big deal for parents to understand that allowing that, fostering that is incredibly important ultimately to the relationship with the parent and the child. Because if you don't do that, if you don't open up those opportunities, eventually this child is not going to want to live in isolation at another house if the houses are like you're describing, kind of in two different worlds, you know? And I think at some point Disneyland Dad is really fun, but when you don't have any friends doing it with you, it kind of might just get like, "Okay, we're doing this again," like, just me and my dad and his girlfriend or wife or whatever it
Yeah.
is, that it 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 might not reap all the benefits that it could if you incorporate, other people in
Yeah.
those critical pieces of a child's life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back, the fact that you learned that he had an affair, it sounds like, prior to that, you weren't aware of turmoil, like you said, in your parents' divorce. But I would imagine with that circumstance, there was some animosity between your parents. Do you recall being aware of tension between them, or can you give examples of situations where maybe separately everything was fine, but if they were together for something or if there was when your dad picked you up or if your mom dropped you off, like whatever that was, how were those times for you?
Um, so my dad always picked me up and always dropped me off. My mom never did that part. Um, and I don't feel like there was tension there. There just wasn't any real connection for them. Like they weren't like, I don't know, I got out of the car and that was it, Like
Yeah.
they weren't like standing around talking or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Wait, can I stop you there for a
yeah.
second? My um my thinking, and please tell me if I'm wrong or right. I just want to know if could expand on this. So my guess is that you see your dad kind of in the world as a normal person. He probably says hi to people he passes on the street, and he's a nice person. And your mom's the same, runs into friends at the grocery store or out in your neighborhood. She's friendly and she talks to people. But then when your dad drops you off, or when they're kind of in those situations, they don't communicate with each other. And so, kind of separately, my parents are nice, happy people that are nice to people and all of that. But when they get near each other, when dropping me off or something, they don't engage with each other. Did that, did you ever pick up on that as being odd, or did it not even phase you?
I don't think it even fazed me in the sense of, like, I just knew, like, obviously they're going through something, right? Like, but yeah, just I didn't think about it that way, I
Yeah.
guess.
And I mean, just interesting because it's just interesting what kids pick up on or what they don't. And so, um, I think that sometimes that can show a lot to a
Yeah.
child, but maybe it's that it wasn't like they were directly not talking. If he was just dropping you off and you're popping out of the car, it's almost like there wasn't opportunity, so there wasn't something for you to see not happen, you know?
Yeah. And to clarify too, like when I said I found out later on about the affair, it wasn't like later on in life. It was like I was young still. I mean, I don't know, maybe into the year that they were going through this or something. Like it was pretty I had overheard my mom on the phone. So, and then I would kind of like sit and spy and listen afterwards.
Did
Like,
she ever know?
mm-mm, no,
No.
no.
Well, that's a lot to carry that she doesn't know you know at that young age, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And, like, what? Because you said you had a good relationship with both of them, so when you hear that, what what do you think about that? What do you do with that information when you see your dad the next time or just when you see your mom?
Um, I never really like I guess, held it against my dad or anything like that. Like, it kinda just it is what it is? I don't ever remember, like, being angry with him or anything like that. And then with my mom, it was more like I need to protect her. Um, so, like, I don't want her getting hurt again. So as I said, like my dad was living with this woman, so obviously she was around all the time and everything that we did, but I didn't I didn't talk about her. Like if my mom said, "Oh, what did you guys do this weekend?" I'd be like, "Oh, dad and I went here," or "Dad and I went to the movies." Like I never said her name. I never mentioned her. I never brought her up. It was like I was trying to like protect my mom from that, but that's a child, as a child, obviously, she's there and my mom knows that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here I am trying to like
Yeah.
minimize the situation,
Mhm.
but
It
now I look at it as an adult, it's like, well,
yeah,
obviously she knew she's there.
yeah. Sometimes I wonder if there was a way to communicate to you, "Hey, I know she's there. We don't have to talk about it, but, like, you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine."
Mhm.
Because I'm also, um, seeing a bit of a thread too where there is a lot of protecting of a parent,
Mm,
of an adult thing.
mm,
And, things that are obvious consequences or ramifications of getting divorced that are what parents expect to go through, and then a kid gets wind of it, or a kid, in your case, overhears information or something, and then now they start to take that on, and sometimes it's really large, and it's very kind of multifaceted, and I think it might require therapy. But in some instances, I think if it just had a little communication around it that was maybe age appropriate, with the goal of just saying, "I've got this." Like, your dad and I are, we are working this out. I know what's going on. I'm okay, because that little bit of stress that you carry, not you might not have even felt that it was that significant at the time, but it's just something that you shouldn't have to carry as a kid,
mm,
and I do believe that there are ways to take that burden off of you just by simply having a bit of a conversation, you know? Again, it would be interesting to talk to your mom as a therapist to know if, like, that's what she thought in terms of
Yeah.
looking back, you know?
And who knows? Maybe she did say that. Maybe there were things said. I don't remember because I was
Right.
so,
Yeah.
uh, and maybe I just continued to behave that way. But I was put in therapy right away. So
Yeah.
I was put in therapy by myself with my dad, like I
Yeah.
don't remember if I was in therapy with my mom as well, but I do recall like going with my dad or like being in the session with my dad. Um and only a handful of times,
Yeah.
but um
Do
but
you do you have, like, clear memories of being in therapy at that age and, like, thinking, like, what you
mm-mm,
thought about it?
no. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I would think.
All I can remember is like being in the room and like, I don't remember anything about the therapy. You
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah, I would imagine not, yeah,
Yeah.
but interesting. I mean, it's such a fascinating layer that your mom is a therapist because I think, like in so many things, you can be a expert on everything, but when it is in your own direct life, can you apply the same
Mhm.
level of, you know.
Advice to yeah.
Yeah, and, like, magnifying the situations to really look at them from an objective perspective. I would never expect that someone can, you know, but it would be interesting, um, just to have the same conversations with her now and be like, you know, "What's your perspective on all this?" Or, like, did she have all these conversations with you and you don't remember them? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I mean, that would be fascinating too.
yeah, I don't know.
Um, so okay, so you find that out and you're kind of navigating going back and forth, and that seems fine. As you're navigating, though, from 9 to essentially, 18, how was your, like, activity or event life where your parents would they come to things you had together? Would they alternate who came to things? Would they be around you in a setting? And if they were, how did that feel? Or if they weren't, how did it feel to only have one or the other?
So the only time that we were around each other, like my dad and my mom in the same place, um they didn't go to like we did everything separate, obviously, like birthdays, Christmas, anything holidays like that. Um, and the only time that they would be in the same place would be like maybe like as I got older, like say an event like a wedding or um my brothers I said were older so they had, I'm trying to think. I was probably in 8th grade when my brother had his first kid and so like birthday parties for the grandkids, like something like that. And then my dad was just really absent. His lady that he had the affair with, they ended up getting married. And they were kind of in their own world. So they traveled a lot. They missed a lot of stuff. And they kind of just they were just on their own program.
Yeah.
So they didn't come to a lot of things. So my dad wasn't very involved in like um extracurricular things that we had, you
Yeah.
know? So it was just kind of at events that they were in maybe the same room. And then it was awkward. It's like, who do you, what do you do? What do you do? Talk? Like, it's just like it, even as an adult, and my brothers would say the same thing, like, oh my God, it was horrible having them in the same room or whatever, even though um, and then they came from, their mom and my dad divorced as well, and they were very young. So they don't ever remember them being together. And, um, and it's just awkward all around.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like as you were even older in those instances, you were still trying to protect your mom in ways like you were earlier or
Mhm. Yeah, like, you don't want her to, like, being around them, you don't want her to feel awkward, you
yeah,
know? But, like, I
yeah.
never thought about, like, my dad feeling awkward.
Right, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, I don't want my
yeah,
mom to feel awkward, you know?
right. Yeah,
So,
yeah, interesting. So then, okay, so you mentioned that you had a baby when you were young. How did that kind of come about between your mom and your dad? Because I would imagine that's like a conversation that they have to have at some point.
yeah. So, again, when you were saying, like, okay, imagine you went to your dad's house till you were 18. Well, no, I didn't, and, also that did kind of change actually when I started driving. So, when I got my license at 16, I would just go there when I wanted to go there.
Okay.
They didn't really hold as I got older, they didn't really hold me to, like it was never like an argument between them, like, who gets her or, like, she has to come to my house this weekend or whatever. It was just kind of like a free for all. And then also I had mentioned like my dad started traveling a lot. So he wasn't around a lot. Like they would leave for months and at a time. Yeah. And so it was kind of just like see you when I see ya kind of thing. And so, but when I started driving, obviously I would just pop in, go to dinner, go, hang out for the day or whatever. And then, yeah, I got pregnant. My mom had called my dad and told him over the phone. And my mom, as a therapist, was very engaging and, supportive and helping and, working everything out. And my dad was the opposite, complete
Wow.
opposite.
Wow.
We didn't talk the whole time I was pregnant. And he did show up at the hospital the day the baby was born. But yeah, it was difficult for him. So
Yeah. Wow. How do you think that maybe I mean, interesting that the 2 things you just told me were how he wasn't around very much as you got older, and then you have a baby when you're young. Those 2 things may have nothing to do with each other, but have you ever thought of them having anything to do with each other, you know?
for sure, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
in the aspect of like, people always say like I think there's like a trend in that, I'm sure you probably know the data better than I do, about, probably un teenage pregnancies or whatever, that, daddy issues.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, yeah, we definitely had those as I got older, and I started to, um, realize and understand and, you know
Did you ever talk to him as you were older and you were able to reflect, um, about any of these kind of I would think it would almost be like epiphanies you'd have later on, like, "I can't even believe this is what the situation was." In the moment, as a child, you're not really processing it all, but then looking back, I mean, did you ever have those conversations with him, or was it more of just, "We were just always good when we were together"?
No. So, well, yes and no. So, yes, in the sense I talked to him, when I got into my early 20s. Um, so my dad still, had lived about a half an hour away. And then, he ended up buying property about 3.5 hours away, and, they would spend a lot of time up there. So now it's even more difficult to see him.
And
Uh
you have a baby at this time, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
early
uh,
20s. Yeah.
yeah, and, and so and, I had lived at home with my mom, and, when he would come down, sometimes he would, so my brother lives, like, literally 5 minutes away. We lived in the same city, and he might be, like, over at my brother's, and, like, I have no idea he's even there. And it's like, "Hey, you think you can, like, let me know when you're here and, like, I can pop over and, see you or whatever?" I got
Wow.
really angry, and, um and I let him know.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like it didn't even dawn on him. That's what was so crazy. And it was like, "Oh, I'm just, like, over here for dinner. Yeah, like, come over." Like, "Yeah, I'll let you
No
know."
big
'Cause
deal.
I don't have my own house. Like I
Yeah.
said, like, my brothers were older than me. They're 16, 17 years older than me.
Yeah.
So they're married, they have their own houses, they are well
Yeah.
into their late 30s,
Yeah.
or whatever. And I was like, I don't have my own house to invite you to have dinner, like I can't do that. But if you let me know you're in town, I will definitely go have dinner with you or come over. And mind you, they still had their house that was a half an
Half an
hour
hour.
away.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, so, anyways, that
But
was
he's going to dinner 5 minutes from where
yeah,
you're at. It's
yeah,
not like dinner is another half an hour the other way. I mean, that's
yeah,
actually really crazy.
yeah. So once that was all laid out and said, he became very attentive, and I think we actually had um a our relationship got a lot better. And it was at that point, and I wasn't in therapy. I don't even know how I had this um realization, but I got to know him, I guess, and I got to know as an adult, right? As me being the adult, I got to know his background and about my grandparents and how he was raised and all these crazy things that he went through, and realized that he was doing the best he could as a father with the tools and he had and the way he was raised. And that was very eye opening to me.
Interesting.
And almost like it gave me the understanding of like, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. And he's like winging it and he's doing the best that he could. My dad passed away when I was 26. No, sorry, 27. 27? Yeah, 27. So we didn't have a lot of time left right after that. From that moment, we probably had a few years.
What a gift, though, that you
Yeah.
kind of stood up for yourself and got maybe a little bit more of a real, like, authentic adult relationship with him that
Yeah.
had you never stood up, maybe you would have never got that, and he would have
Yeah.
spent the next, whatever, 4 or 5 years until he died going to your brothers for dinner
Yeah.
with you
Yeah.
down the road. I mean,
Yeah.
you stood up for yourself and got something in return that had you known that he was going to die so relatively soon to that, I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a huge thing that you kind of created out
Yeah.
of that. You know,
And I
he
think, yeah. And I think too, like, because he had cancer, and he was diagnosed, 4 years prior to when he passed. And so then when you're faced with that, I think as a person, you go back, right, through your life and what you did and what you didn't do. He had changed a lot after that diagnosis. And we had a really good 4 years with him. He was around all the time. I mean, he was in treatment for so long, so he couldn't really travel and do much, and he was in treatment here, so they were back living here, and then even when he was done, he was in treatment for, like, 6 months, and then they went back up north, and then his wife was like, she wanted to stay up there, and he was kinda like, I wanna spend more time with my kids and my family and all that sort of stuff, so he would come down here quite a bit by himself, and so that was really nice too, because he would call me and be like, "I'm gonna be here from this to this time," and so on Thursday night, my daughter would go to her dad's, and I'd go down there and we'd meet for dinner, and that became like a constant thing, so it
And
was nice.
probably kinda nice that it was just your dad, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
we
I
got a
mean
lot of one-on-one time.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, when you I think your mom obviously is, like, the stability is what I'm gathering from this, like, all of this kind of up and down with your dad, along the way. Have you reflected on that difference in your life and having your mom that really kind of just was your rock, but also were there times where you kinda went up and down with your mom, or did she always kind of play that even keel person for you?
Yeah. She was she never showed it. So, of course, I'm sure she had her moments and, I mean, it's not probably the greatest thing to hear your teenage daughter is pregnant, but, she took everything in stride and she did the most she could to make my life as normal as possible, and for me to not resent anything of my decisions that I made. She was always supportive, and then again, my dad was very supportive as well after the
Yeah,
fact.
yeah,
Um, he was very supportive financially. She was more supportive, emotionally, and that figure that was always there,
yeah, yeah.
But, looking at both of their backgrounds, my mom came from a really stable family and my dad came from a really crazy family.
So
So,
it's played
it
out that way.
yeah, it's just funny
Yeah,
that, like it's the way the dice is rolled, I guess, what you get and then how it really affects you. I mean, and as a parent now and when my kids are teenagers and my daughter's an adult now, but when we were raising them, it was like my husband and I always were like, we don't want to mess them up, right? Because this is like you mold your kids and your family unit really affects how they're going to grow up and what they're going to be like as an adult and their emotional being and everything. So it's just crazy to me how much power parents have, like that what plays into their upbringing, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's just it's it's wild.
It's the appreciation of that power that I
Mhm.
hear in what you're saying that is, um, oddly like a gift of coming from divorced families, you
Mhm.
know? I don't that's not to say that everybody can't understand how important it is to actually your role as a parent. I think it's pretty clear in general, but there's a nuance to it that I think kids whose parents have gone through a divorce, they just know it a little bit differently. And
I think more
so
aware.
yeah. So I want to take you to your daughter's born and you're 16. Sounds like you and the dad, you said you didn't get married, but I'm assuming maybe you were together for a while. My question is not so much with your sons, but with your daughter. How did your kind of relationship with your dad, but also just with your parents affect the way that you approached that basically co-parenting at a very young age? Um, because you're coming from a place where you have a daughter and you're not married to her dad, so you're already in separate places, and you have your experience with your dad. How do and I'm sure you're not actually processing all of this when you're 16 years old, but maybe get to 18 or 20 or at some point, it must have been at least under the radar there to make decisions differently because of that experience, do you think?
I don't know. In terms of, yes, we were together for about a year and a half. So she was about a year and a half when we broke up. Now I'm graduated from high school. I'm 18 and he would stay here with like at our house and a lot with her. And then he lived at his parents' house. Um and there just wasn't room technically for her to be
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
He had 3 siblings and his parents, so there's 6 people already in their house. I think actually his, older sister was away at college, but anyways, there wasn't a lot of room, right? So she didn't really go there. Like, I mean, she went there. He had her and over and would take her and stuff like that. But and then she was so young. So what are you gonna,
yeah,
she didn't stay the night there. So
yeah.
she just we made a decision that she's gonna go there on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays. And so that's what we did. And there was no court orders and there was nothing. We just decided ourselves and that's the way it was gonna be. And again, so young, he's in college himself, working a part-time job. So, he did what he could financially, and we both did what we could financially, and our parents helped us out tremendously. And then, as we both got older, um, it just stayed the same.
Yeah.
Like, she just, my daughter was like, never the place of her going over there Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday stayed the same until she
Wow.
was 16 and could drive herself to go see him.
Wow.
Um, and he lived 5 minutes away as well, so we never had any, it
So
just all it just all worked out.
she didn't have, um like, you didn't have to worry, it sounds like, about her having a relationship with a dad that was up and
No.
down or in and out,
No.
so to
No.
speak.
And again, he was always present, he was always there, he coached her soccer team, he went to everything, he came from a wonderful family. Again, his parents, wonderful people who were married till she passed away. His siblings, I have wonderful relationships with them. It just worked, and I know we are rare.
Yeah. But so fortunate. I mean, just to have to be a good story in the world of teenage pregnancy, and yes, it's not everybody's going to have that story, but people could take from it different things to have a good story. They could still take some of that and see how it worked. It doesn't have to look exactly the same or have, sisters and
Yeah.
great family and everybody, all of that. But you can see how there are things that matter most,
Yeah.
and it necessarily isn't finances or different things. It's being present. It's respecting both people that they're a part of this family and sticking to a consistent something for this child, you
Yeah.
know?
And I wouldn't say that we were perfect, like, yeah, did we have our
Of course.
arguments
Yeah,
and did we fight and things weren't good sometimes? Yes.
of course.
But for the most part, it wasn't about us, right? I mean, the things we were arguing about were things between the two of us. It wasn't about her. Um, and there was never any arguments about um anything that had to do with her, like, "I'm gonna take her here," or "I'm gonna," "I want her on Christmas." "No, you can't have her." It just everything just worked out for
Yeah.
the types of things, but
But
yeah.
you also kind of saw that in your own parents, that there wasn't a lot of fighting over you. Things seemed
Yeah.
very kind of easy, and if they adjusted, it was kind of because you wanted it to adjust,
Mm.
I think that
Yeah.
you were given this, like, very, I would say, kind of calm and peaceful role model in that a little bit, and maybe it wasn't in terms of the stress and the tension when people were together and all of that, but in terms of parenting you, it sounds like it was very peaceful in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I that you say that because it kind of made me think like I want to ask my daughter now like what did
Yeah.
she think about going to her dad's? I know like as she got a little preteenish, she'd be like, I don't, I'll go there all day or whatever. Like, but there was never a struggle for her to go. And it's interesting that you say it was kind of based on my decision when my parents were going through a divorce, like, whether or not, like, "Oh, I wanna go home," and my dad would, "Okay, I'll take you home a little early," or whatever. Um, and I kind of, yeah, did the same thing with her. It's like we never really pushed her to do something if she didn't want to do it. And there was no argument with that between us, like, as the adults, so
Yeah. And I think you know, in that, there's you're doing things that reflect what your child wants to do, and in doing that, you're keeping a bit of a more, like, centered situation, but the only way you can do that is if the adults decide not to fight about it and not
Mhm.
to tug of war the kid and all of that, and just be like, I just want the kid to be happy. I want the kid to be with me and enjoy being with me. And if they want to go home a couple hours early, I mean, and obviously there's different dynamics, and obviously changing plans can spiral into other things in not healthy situations. But
Mm.
your both examples are very interesting examples of more, your parents obviously had probably a lot more acrimony than you and your daughter's father, but still people that really managed to do right for the kid
Mhm.
and adjust when the kid needed an adjustment, and it's
And
really
I don't
interesting.
know, maybe there was more behind my mom
Yeah,
and dad that I just don't know, but
yeah,
that's how I view it.
right,
Maybe my dad was like, "No, I'm not bringing her home." I don't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but I don't remember it being
But
different.
that's the good part, is that you don't have a memory of being involved in the conflict of
Mm.
them fighting over you.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
if it was going on, they did a great job of keeping you out of it, which is another great thing.
Yeah.
And maybe some of that was your mom as a therapist going, I know that this stuff is what impacts kids. So I can't allow these certain things, because those are some of the things you've said where she's been really stable or she doesn't say certain things or whatever. Like, I feel like those are really like the critical pieces that every family therapist is kind of like, don't do these 5 things when you get divorced,
Mhm.
and she would know that and she would know why those things are so incredibly negative, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting. So the last question I have for you is really when you look back at all of this and you kind of, you didn't have a hugely traumatic childhood of divorce in the sense that you had all these significant traumatic instances on top of the fact that just children of divorce suffer trauma. That is a trauma.
Yeah.
Um, but obviously, it's no one's ideal. You're raising 2 boys with your husband, that is your ideal. Actually, I have 2 questions. So, as you were then going out into the dating world, does your experience affect or how does your experience affect how you're looking for the person that you wanna marry and form that nuclear family with?
Oh, so I don't think it was thought about that way, for me. When I started dating other people, after her dad, um, I think I was just, I was young and it was just like, who do I like and what am I gonna have fun, um, not until I got older, a little older, was like, okay, I need to focus on what do I really want, after I dated a few guys that it was like, okay, I need to really figure out what I want in somebody. Um, but so I don't think right away it changed anything. But yeah, I think my husband and I, he's from a family of divorce and as well. And his father, he didn't want to be anything like his father. So he has worked really hard in not doing that and, trying to really step up for our kids and we work really hard. I feel like at our marriage. Um, but yeah, I don't know that there was ever like a plan in place for me. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like specifically.
that makes sense. I think that that's young. I think that, unless it's something being instilled in you from a young age about, what to look for, at
Hmm.
that point, you're just kind of navigating being a young mother and dating
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and probably like, I'm gonna date someone and I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year you know what I mean? Like, that's a totally different dynamic than
Yeah.
a regular 25, 26-year-old.
Yeah. I
Um,
will say though too, I think I did have like commitment or not commitment problems. I didn't have commitment issues. I could commit. I just had like I don't know what you would call it, but like I could disconnect really easily from a relationship. So
Interesting.
like if I dated somebody for 2 years and then it's like all of a sudden like, okay, bye, I'm done with you. Like no, like
Mm, yeah.
kind of thing. And that was kind of my MO until I met my husband.
Do you think you can see that ability to disconnect in all the relationships in your life or just, like, romantic relationships?
I think it was just romantic relationships because I've never had that problem with family or friends or anything like that. And I think, but I do think it's a product of my upbringing in divorce.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
What a good thing to be aware of, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I'm sure you weren't exactly aware of it at the time it was when you were disconnecting
Yeah.
very well. Um, I mean, just because that's the thing that you can talk to your kids about. That's a thing, whether it's disconnecting romantically or with friends or whatever, like you've experienced that, which isn't a typical way to be at the end of especially like of a 2-year relationship, And so it's just a perspective that's really fascinating to then impart onto your kids and talk about if in different situations as they come up.
Mhm.
Um So this is my actual last question.
Okay.
As you look back, what do you think is your greatest positive impact from all that kind of transpired from when you were 9 until, until maybe having your own kids or until now, if you look and kind of go, that's the biggest, greatest thing that I got from it.
Hmm. Gosh, put me on the spot.
You can take your time.
um, I think a couple things. I'll say. Um, I think after my dad passing away, I think having that time with him, like I said, like in the last couple years of his life, um, and getting to that point of realization of him and who he was, and like I said, like his ability to father, coming to that realization was huge for me. Huge to let go of expectations of him, because I feel like as a child, you have these expectations, um, whether they're just you learn from other people or you see around you, or it's just you want your dad to be around. I don't know what it is. But I think once I learned that, I could feel settled in myself and move past like the anger I had with him, and kind of like I don't want to say let him off the hook, but it's almost like that. Like it's like, okay, this poor man, like he's doing the best he can with how he was raised and the tools he was given. And when I realize that, I can then be okay with the relationship that we have.
Mhm.
So for me, that was really big. I've shared that with others who have gone through similar situations, and hoping that it can help them too, to kind of just dig in and see like why are people the way they are,
Yeah.
because there's usually always an underlying issue, and that was his.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel really settled.
Yeah.
uh, so that was like my one big thing. And then the second thing is like you said, like being a parent, and just, we're not perfect, nobody is, but just trying to do our best and be very conscious of things we say and things we do, and having really good and open relationships, and being present for our kids. Um, there's not a single thing that I feel like I feel like we do a really good job in um, being present. I don't know, ask my kids, they may think something
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
but
I'm sure they would agree. I think that what you said about the expectations, I think that it's kind of similar to when you as just a adult or a parent or a person in the world realize that like you can't do everything perfectly, and you
Mhm,
give yourself that grace to like either let things go or be imperfect and move forward and still try, or just not holding yourself to a certain level of expectation where you're constantly feeling like you're failing. Maybe
right,
that's coming from like the mother in me, but it's also just a person thing. But I think it's so huge because that's such a gift to you for your feelings of your dad and that relationship, and probably healed many little things that happened along the way, but
mhm,
also like a gift to give you going forward.
right,
Like what a wonderful realization that you had
yeah,
in that, and yeah, I mean, everybody's just doing the best they can and we can all do better, but some people have limitations.
mhm,
And I think that it's like when you start to see your parents as humans versus your parents. it's a different perspective, you know? And yeah, I think that's a wonderful lesson to impart to others because I
Yeah.
think people can incredibly heal with
Yeah.
that little bit of awareness, you know, and give them the courage to dig into people's history or ask questions or get curious because they know that it can bring them peace.
Mhm.
As hard as it might be, because it's probably not easy for a lot of people to find out information like that can get them there, but
Yeah.
knowing that it can give you some solace, I think is a really big deal.
Yeah. And I'm glad it happened before he passed away
Yeah,
because, I was
absolutely.
pretty young. So for me to, figure that all out at that
Yeah,
young age
yeah,
is a blessing. So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, things happen for reasons, I think, and that's, what a great example of that.
yeah, for sure.
Wow. Well, I thank you so much for sharing your story with me.
Yeah.
That uh, I think that every piece of someone's story is gonna resonate with someone who's living it or parents who are trying to manage better for kids, and, I just think it has so much value. So, thank you for your time and for walking me through the past, 30 years or whatever of your life. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Of
Thank you.
course.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Together we can shape healthier paths for families to do divorce better. See you next time on In Between Them.